Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Welcome to your Shoe Room Session.
Thank you very much.
Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, crikey, that's quite a big question. I'm Sarah Felfel, and I head up the HR function of Oxygen House. And I've been with the company for about 7 years. That's my my working life. Who am I? I'm Sarah. I'm married. I've got a little girl, Aggie, who's 5.5. Trying to think what else. Love outdoors, love nature, hence why I work where I work. Anything else you want to know? Is that too much of a...
There's going to be one or two more questions if that's okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. I thought we might do some more.
For ages and then not get to the point.
No, it's all good. I like to set the scene by asking people what their career contents page looks like. So take us from where you grew up, school, uni, the chapters that would make up your story. Give us a quick overview of that.
So early years was brought up in a little farming village in Cornwall. And then everyone asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had this, I don't know why or how it came about, this absolute clarity of, I want to be a nurse. I want to drive a white mini metro. It was very specific and I don't know why. And then I'm thinking, is it open all hours? Did I watch that? In there, the train, a white mini metro. I don't know, it's very random. So that was my only...
I wanted to be an antique stealer because I like Lovejoy, the TV show.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was really good. I like classic, really good. So that was my upbringing in Cornwall, in a little farming village, really close-knit community. Family all lived half the family lived in the village. The other half lived about 5 miles away on a coastal village. Went to school. I'm not particularly academic, or I never thought I was. My brother was more of the academic and found it really easy. Well, I had to try really hard to get grades that were reasonable. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Always dance. Dance was my thing. So music and dance is my kind of release, what I love doing. So I did ballet from an early age and started doing contemporary, did a GCSE in dance, which was quite cool for that era. It's the first time I think it went through the school. And that was my thing. And I remember getting to a point of where it's either dance school or it's something else. So it's probably more practical because you've got to be really, really good to make it. And if you might get an injury, then your career ends. And then what do you do? Is that, so, oh no, what do I do? And it's one of those hearts and heads moment. And I went with the head and went, I think I'm going to go and do a business and finance course because I think that would be good because then I could set up my own dance school if I want to do that and keep it as a hobby. So that was my logic at that time. And then got into, actually, this is quite cool. I quite like, apart from economics, really didn't like economics. So I did that, then went to university and did the same thing, I can't remember what the title was now, it feels like 100 years ago. Business administration.
And where did you go to uni?
Plymouth. Okay. So really close to home. Never really had the desire to move away too far. And I only realised, I don't know, probably about 15 years ago what it was. And it's I don't like being too far away from the sea. I was always that person that was like, I never take for granted where I live. No, I really appreciate it. And it was only when one of my friends moved to the Oxford area and I went up there and my husband said, like, oh, this is really nice. This is kind of, I could see. And he's like, no, you couldn't. What do you mean? You said you couldn't even never live within more than 5-10 minutes of the sea and open countryside. And he was like, yeah, it's open countryside here, but at the sea. I was like, God, I have totally taken that for granted. I never thought I would. So yes, I never really had the desire. A lot of my friends, so I went to university in Plymouth and a lot of my friends after university went to London and did the thing and I almost did it. And I was like, I just can't do it. I just love being where I am, close to the sea, close to the moors, close to the woods, all those sorts of things. So I didn't. Yeah, so university. And even then, it wasn't obvious that I wanted to do HR. I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I'd say economics, I did okay, didn't really enjoy it. Finance, again, was okay. But then I started to think, oh yeah, some of these kind of things that were a bit more shades of grey and a bit of ambiguity and feelings and people. I was like, I kind of get that. Always like being really organised and prepared. And then I left university and found it really hard to get a job in the southwest because all my friends got to London and they were like, oh yeah, we've got loads of opportunities. I was like, oh God, this is hard. So anyway, long story short, ended up working with the military, but as a civilian, as a PA to the commander of the submarine school, which was really, really cool. So I started to do like EA and PA work because I quite enjoyed that, the organisation side of it. It was really broad ranging and there's like people aspects to it as well. So I did that and then
which I think are the most amazing entry-level jobs to any business, because you get, for a relatively junior role, you get exposure to everything, and the senior relationships, and you have to deliver everything without role power or seniority to get it. So I think PAs and EAs out there are amazing. You are totally underrated.
And it's just, that's for life, those skills. I mean, yeah, absolutely, but it sets you up so well. So I did that, and it kind of, I mean, the role was absolutely amazing, and it's always lovely because I met my husband there, so I've got real...
You insisted on going on a submarine, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So, yeah, we were there. I'm in the submarine school, and there's a building, and it's like mini village. I was like, well, I can't, if I'm going to understand what it's like for these people, can we go down on a submarine? Well, we didn't actually go down and go dive or anything, but can I go visit a submarine? So we did a kind of visit, and oh my God, I left going, why would anybody sign up to do this? It's crazy. What you think it is, just triple, well, more than triple it. It's like the beds, no, you don't have your beds, you have shifts. And obviously my husband gave me more insight because he was a submariner. So it's kind of your 6 hours on, 6 hours off, so you kind of share beds. And you have like a little cabin, like a little...
Which ironically is kind of like living in London now anyway, so what?
Right, yeah. Actually, it's quite good. Yeah, really similar. I've lost my train of thought now. Where were we? Submarines.
Visiting the submarines, yeah.
Yeah, visiting that. So it really, really interesting, really fond memories, amazing boss. There was a commander, then there were 4 or 5 lieutenant commanders as well. And I can remember my dad saying to me, really, really proud of you getting this job. Whatever you do, don't bring a sailor home. I was like, okay, all right, Dad, off I spring, 21, thinking, oh, I'm a genie, I know, I can drink for one. I know what I'm doing, I'm so worldly wise. Oh, crikey, no.
And how soon after that did a sailor come home?
Well, I waited for a little bit to tell my dad. My dad had worked it out already. This mother's intuition was like, yeah, you've met someone older, haven't you? And yeah, he's a sailor, isn't he? Like, yeah. So I worked up the courage. So yeah, 6 months to the starting, plucking up the courage to tell my dad. There's kind of a deep breath because there was quite a lot to get out. I was like, Dad, I've met someone. He is a sailor. And I was like, oh, pause, wait for it. And there was nothing. I was like, oh no. So I thought, I just got to do it. A bit like swearing, just get it all done in one go. He's 12 years older. He's got a son. He's been married before, but the son isn't from the marriage. He's half Glaswegian. He's half Arabic. There was a really long pause. He just walked out the rear room. Oh no.
Did he walk back in at any point?
He did.
Yeah, nice.
He was like, okay, thanks for telling me. I mean, he's like, I love my dad. It's such a close relationship with my mum and dad. And it's just the protection thing kicking in. And Sammy now is like, I so get it now with our daughter Ricky's.
Yeah. I was talking about this before. My daughter's 7 at the moment, and it's not okay. I'm not comfortable with her growing up. It's not all right.
And yeah, my dad definitely had the kind of like, for like about 6 months, Sammy said it took about 6 months, and then there was I think this is going to be all right. I don't think he's going to get his shotguns out. This is okay. Yeah, so that was a submarine school.
Yep, nice.
And it was only after that I thought, well, I then moved to another EA role, again for a kind of high net worth entrepreneur, private consultancy company, which again was absolutely amazing. It's exactly as you said. And he wore so many different hats. So he was kind of the CEO, then he looked after the operations side of it, then all of this kind of stuff. And that's where I started to get my first kind of experiences, quite specific HR things, quite light touch because it was quite a small organisation. I was thinking, it's quite interesting. I quite like this. So then I did my qualification at the same time as working, which was really quite hard because it was quite a hardcore role as well. And then I thought, actually, yeah, this is what I think I really want to do. So then from then moved into my first HR role, which was in the legal industry. Then moved from there to the aviation industry and then to Oxygen Health. So I haven't looked back.
Nice. Yeah. What does the head of HR do on a day-to-day basis?
Got anything and everything to do with people and business. I was trying to, when you said that, I was like, well, at a high level, like a theoretical thing, how I perceive my role is to help the business and people thrive. Overall, that's how I approach things. And I think there are varying views around my profession of HR people, that sometimes that isn't felt, I think.
No, they just say no. So there are two HR professionals in the world I like. One is you and one is Andrew, our head of people. And that was literally one of my questions. So in my experience, HR always just say no. They think they run the business and tell you what to do, even when you own the business. Why are you different? Why is that not how you work?
Because I don't think that's our role. Our role is not to say no. Exactly that. And the only analogy I could think is we're not here that, and I don't mean this badly against the professionals that we're the tail, but if you think about the tail and the dog, we should not be wagging the dog. Is that the right time? I don't know if I've got my...
You considered a career in veterinary, so pivoting up to this.
So what I'm trying to say is it's not our role to say no. It's not our role to tell people what to do. It's our role to enable, to make the right decisions, to get people to a place where they've got all the information and to guide people. It's not our job to say no. If someone's saying this is what I want to do, yeah, you can do that.
What you do beautifully is you say, understand that. Have you thought about A and B? Would this work to help you achieve that? Brilliant, great. Okay, let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, is it a lonely role? Because you have to keep so many secrets and it must be quite hard knowing when and where you can speak freely about things.
Yeah, it is. It is. And also my brain gets frazzled quite a lot because of that, because you're in a role where, and I feel really privileged and really responsible in the role that I have, that trusted advisor is something I feel very strongly about. I feel really proud about that, but also there's the whole weight of responsibility that comes with it. And yeah, when there's so much in there, and depending on what you're dealing with, you're then really thinking, and my brain is going, right, I know that, they don't. When was that? What's the timing? No, right, okay.
You have to live in multiple realities, right?
Yeah.
Different time domains.
Really good way of defining. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it can be quite lonely. And I think I shoulder quite a lot of emotion as well. And I think I wouldn't be the right person doing this job if I didn't. And if I was, oh, that's fine, let's just move on. I really, really shoulder that emotion and try to think about if I was in that position, or how could that be perceived? How could that land, and try and think all the way around that to get to something. And so, yeah, I do find myself feeling quite lonely in my thoughts sometimes, but also, yeah, exactly. You've got quite a lot in there that you can't show. I call it my lockbox in my brain. It's locked in there.
It's interesting, isn't it? The thing that makes you brilliant at your role is the thing that makes it emotionally hard to do your role. And I felt that earlier in my career when I was running. So in the public sector, I was managing teams in the several hundreds of people. And I think the thing that makes me hopefully effective in a leadership role is genuinely caring about people, trying to champion them as individuals and find ways of them being exceptional. Yeah. I couldn't scale that to hundreds of people because I couldn't be pulled in that many ways, which is why I never want to have a team of 400 or 500 again. We're very fortunate to have a really small, close-knit team that work really well together. Because I cared about them as people, and the thing that made me able to do it was the thing that made it incredibly difficult.
It's really, really hard. It's similar to you. When I worked in the aviation industry, that was the most employees I'd worked with. And I think part of it was I struggled to some, but I absolutely loved it. But emotionally, I struggled for that same reason. And I think that made me realise, actually, I really like working up to a certain amount where there's employees, because I really struggle. And it was a disparate workforce. We had bases everywhere, all across the UK, and then going into Europe. And I was thinking, I really struggle when I can't make that connection. You
only have a certain amount of bandwidth, and it can be pulled down or out, but ultimately you can only deform your time in such a way. Yeah. If you're trying to spread it over 400 people, the bit they get is...
Yeah, and I really find that hard. So after that, I was like, I know now, that's in my mind. I did it, and it's amazing, really good experience, lifetime friends from there. But yeah, I was like, I really like working for a certain amount of employees where I can still have that connection.
Meaningful relationship.
Yeah, I really do care. And I don't know if people realise that. I think some people see it as, oh, it's HR and it's your job, so you're just doing it. And I'm like, well, yes, I am doing my role, but I really do care, and there's a lot of thought. And my brain is frazzled, and my emotions are quite a lot of the time, because these are people's lives that you're dealing with, and it's, you have to consider that. You can't just make snap decisions and go about it in the wrong way, because that can change someone's course of life, or change the way that they feel about themselves, their confidence or their self-respect. And I just think that's such a responsibility. You have to be so mindful of that and help them, if it's not on the right path with where you're working, enable them to feel the best they can feel about moving on and seeing how great they are, but thrive in a different way. that's so important. That's kind of how I think about it. It's not as simple as, oh, it's just a resource, so we'll just cut that, so that's okay. And I mean, that's just not it. It's people's lives.
Do you think some people, when interacting with you, some people see Sarah the person, other people see the head of HR person?
Yeah. I'd like to think, so this is a struggle I have, and I'd like to think people see that as me, but I think there are still people that will probably think, that's Sarah in her role, and I just think, oh, I am one of the same, and it's part of getting used to, I suppose, for me, because I really care, and it's really hard if you think people have a different perception of you, and it's not that I'm a people pleaser, but it's like I hope people see how much I care, but of course they don't, because you can't share everything that you do out of respect to the individuals or the matter that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. And then I think, oh, crikey, there's a certain amount of just have to switch off to some of that, because it just sends you going crazy thinking, oh, what do people think of me? Do they think this? And it's really, really hard. But yeah, so I am quite genuine and authentic, I think.
You are, yeah.
So I hope people can see that. But I think when you are in this type of role, people have it's hard to break down that kind of,
I think you can read it though sometimes. I think the demeanour, the body language, the facial gesture, the eye contact, you're like, okay, we're people, or, oh, right, okay, this person is now in a level of rigidity. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned about the sort of exit scenarios and things like that, which we'll come on to. But before we do, culture in business, everyone wants to talk about culture, right? Yeah. And it frustrates me because in the corporate world and public sector, in my experience, senior team would disappear off for an away day, write 3 words on the wall and come back and go, this is our culture, everyone. Yeah, this is what we do. And they're like, what is it? It was something different last week, and it totally isn't. What does a good business culture look like to you?
God, the best way I can think about it, and it's an analogy, don't worry, it's not a dog and a tail analogy.
Is it a cat?
It's not a cat.
Okay.
It's not an animal.
Okay.
I think culture is basically the personality. That's the best way I think about it in my mind. It's the personality of the organisation, and it's not clear-cut or scientific, like you say, as in, well, we can define it as this. I'm like, it changes and adapts. There's a kind of general, as your own personality, you change, don't you? You gain confidence or you gain assertiveness, or depending on where you are, but the actual core of you is still the same, and that's how I perceive culture. So I think, what does a good culture look like when it's, and again, you think about its personality, like authentic, transparent as you can be, but being honest about it, to say, we will always be honest, but we can't tell you everything.
Yeah.
Or we do know more, but we can't tell you now, which builds trust and care. I don't think it's complex. There's loads of other words I could use, but I'm thinking if you've got those at the core, then everything else comes from it.
When we were starting to scale oxygen conservation from like me and Dan starting out, I intentionally resisted writing anything down until we were like a year in, because I was like, we're not going to say it's about X and then try and do it. We're going to try and grow the best business we can, and then authentically and honestly say, well, what is this about? And that's where we hit upon adventure, environment and impact, and constantly testing is, so whenever we invite anyone else to join, I'll say, this is what I think this business is going to be like. And in 3 months, say to them, what have you experienced? Is this what we promised you? Tells it. And that's the only way I've been authentically able to do it, I think. They're really testing that that's what we're about. I think if you do it the other way, you're just struggling. You're just trying to imitate.
Yeah. And also you're kind of then trying to fit into a box, which it doesn't work.
And everyone knows as well. One of my rules in business is everybody knows. So if you say you're about the environment and actually I rock up drinking a plastic bottle of Evian and kicking your dog, I'm not about people and nature, am I? I'm a hypocrite. And as soon as you have a gap, a say-do gap, if you say you're about X and you behave like Y, your integrity is gone, right? Exactly. And people, it doesn't come back.
Yep, that's it.
Once you lose a room full of people that way.
It's so emotive for people, isn't it? You spend a lot of time at work, you put a lot of emotion into it, you want to make those connections, you want to feel that you're inspired by these people. So like you say, it doesn't take a lot for that to suddenly go. When that's gone, that's really hard, because people, particularly in this business where you work with, they're great people and they really care. That's why they're here. They're not here for anything other.
The other thing that is happening a lot is I think hard work and drive is becoming almost vilified in culture. So you end up with the narrative that you should work less. That doesn't mean don't work how you want to, but it means if people work. So I previous chapters of careers being told, oh, we need you to work less because you're making other people feel uncomfortable about how much you're working and stuff like that. Whereas actually, I think one of the beautiful things about OC is everyone works incredibly hard because we know we're on a planet that is running out of time and we're trying to scale conservation as quickly as we can. We're really clear and open about that, and we still want to protect people and look after them. And to be fair, I spend more of my time telling people to stop working at the moment than I do asking them to work harder. But how do you feel about that topic? Have you seen that change in terms of the way hard work's viewed and perceived as part of business culture?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's still quite a traditional view, but I think a lot of that has been challenged with lockdown, because I think a lot of what people associate as hard work is, in the traditional view, is long hours in the office.
Yeah.
Being there, every time I turn around, they're there. And I think that's forced people to challenge that view. It still does remain. But I think you're right. But I think there's also a certain amount, like I said, when you work or you want to work in an environment where it's kind of values-led, or you're on a mission and it's something you really believe in, it doesn't feel like...
It's addictive as well. That's the phrase we get a lot.
Yeah.
That everyone... Because we're so fortunate to work with 20 amazing people, everyone looks around and goes, well, this person's driving on and doing this and this. So they want to. When so we're at Shoot Room in Monaco, when Charles joined us when we got the estate, a couple of months after him joining, I got a message going, it's just addictive working with your team. Because you're seeing everyone else's energy and enthusiasm in it, and it builds and goes.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're going to go?
No, I was just going to say, so I think it is changing. And I think also with the generations coming through where there's more prominence in terms of wanting to do the right thing, wanting to work for purpose-led, wanting to feel the impact I leave on this planet, or the impact that I feel like I've achieved something good, for greater good. I think more of that is flowing through.
I always playfully say, if you're a professional surfer, no one says to you, go surfing less. So if you have a job you love, you should work less. Should I? What should I do instead? Watch crappy TV and swear at absolutely fabulous.
And the thing is, like, and it's okay, like, I love doing what I do. Do I have, like, days when I just feel wiped out, or I feel a bit deflated? Yeah, of course, we're all human. You do. You just think, oh, God.
And what do you do on those days, Sarah? When you are shattered and you feel it, what is your refresh and rejuvenate?
Bedtime stories with Aggie.
Nice.
And snuggles. Yeah. That's like, that just makes me, tops up my battery levels. I just think, I just get, I get an energy from that. I just think, that's good.
Have you read of the Lorax? The Dr. Seuss.
No, I haven't, no.
Did I send you that?
You did, because you sent me the video.
Yeah. So I read it to my daughter, and for those of you, spoiler alert, for those of you who haven't read the Lorax, cut a load of trees down, damage the environment, and it's a call to action, that book. And Emma was asking me loads of questions about, are people allowed to cut down trees, Daddy? Is that okay? And I had to explain, yes, it is. And at the end I said, well, we're trying to plant a lot of trees to make a difference. And she just looked at me and went, don't try. And I was like, yes.
So powerful.
I know, it was so good. Yeah.
But it's funny because Aki now we've got every week she has like a spelling quiz. They don't call it test anymore; it's a quiz. And I say, should we do it on the whiteboard or should we do it on the pen? Mummy, we do it on the whiteboard because we'll save the trees and we'll save the planet. I'm going to do it on the whiteboard, Mummy. I'm like, I love that. So yeah, bedtime stories, and I have got that on my list. And you and I had that conversation about the road.
Nice.
So that's on my list. So that and so family time, and also music. And a bit of movement. I look like a nutter sometimes. I'll be at home and I'll be prancing around, or because I love dance and I love music. Even on the way here today.
What were you listening to?
It's like, it was the radio, but it seemed to be like R&B hour, and I was like, this is me. I love R&B. So yeah, that kind of soulful, that beats, all those. I love that. That's my kind of I can feel myself shoulders going. Yeah, this is okay. I'm feeling a bit restored. That
is a perfect moment for us to take a short break, and we'll be back with part 2. Welcome back for part 2.
Thank you.
So, second part of this, you and I have got our heads together and we've agreed we're going to talk about the dark arts of HR. So earlier in my career, I happened upon lots of different sensitive HR issues that I was never prepared to deal with. You know, I was an early director who was kind of floating around a lot, so had opportunities to be parachuted in to deal with complicated, difficult situations. And I was always learning on the job. And I think a lot of this stuff is just not talked about enough outside of pure HR professionals. So what I'm hoping we can do with this is have some examples and some hints and tips for those people out there that are starting their line management journeys, starting to deal with these situations, so they can learn from some of my mistakes and your experiences and see where we can go from that. So the first one everyone really worries about when you're a line manager is what happens if you have to exit someone from a business, be it a dismissal or redundancy? How do you best do that?
Yeah. I think my best advice is treat the individuals like humans. and treat them with respect. Because that's the least you can do. And again, I referred to earlier in terms of these are people in people's lives.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a business decision that needs to be done, and it's probably for the right reasons. But equally, there's a certain way that you can go about it for the individuals so they can leave, or treat them with respect, so they can leave with their head held as high as they can, and they maintain a kind of self-confidence that they can then go on and forge the next thing that is good for them. So I think in that, it's getting the right balance of, well, this is what we need to achieve. Is there a different way of achieving, or a different way that we can make it land for the individual where they feel that they have been treated, So there are situations where people go, look, I get it, I don't like it, but I get it, but thank you for treating me in that way. So it's exactly that. So you could just go and say, right, this isn't working, or whatever the reason is. Actually think about it in a different way. And very often in those situations, you've got individuals where, because of the circumstance, they're made to, they don't feel it wouldn't be their option to have that conversation. So that's really hard from a kind of individual's viewpoint, because you feel like options have been taken away from you. You haven't asked to be in this position. And that's awful, because you're then on the back foot. And what do you want to incite? You don't want to fight or flight reaction. You want to be human about it, because I genuinely do care.
Yeah.
So I think it's enabling them to feel like, whilst they probably wouldn't want to be in this situation, there are still options and things that we can work on together and agree a way forward for you. And I think for me, it's that in a really holistic view as well, not just getting the job done and that's it, they're gone. But also what will enable them to do great things afterwards. Is there a way that we can package something or talk to them or put something in place where they feel they've got the confidence and to go and do something else? And I think, quite waffly, I know.
No, it's good.
Hard. There's so much ambiguity with all of this, because every situation, everyone is very different.
Totally.
And people, they're individuals, and they'll react, and they've got different. On any day when you have that conversation, someone could have been told their partner's leaving them.
Yep.
They've had a death in the family. They're worried about their unborn child, or and this is people's lives. So I just think you have to go about it in such a humane way, where you are treating them as individuals and with that care, because you don't know what else is going on.
When you were sort of describing the range of things you were thinking through these processes, I thought about 4 or 5 different exits I facilitated, and one of the most unusual was a person who had been brought into a role. I wasn't involved in the recruitment part of it. Subsequently took over a department this person was part of. It was abundantly clear they were out the depths. They weren't able to perform at this level. I was given the task of moving this person on from the business. And I remember having the conversation, and they said, that's a relief.
Yeah.
Because they knew, one of my rules in business is everybody knows. So often the problem of a poor performer, and I have 4 rules around a poor performer to test yourself. Does the person know they're not performing? Because half the time no one gets told.
Yeah.
Do they understand what's required of them, full stop, anyway? Is there anything outside of their control that means they can't? So don't they have the right kit or the right equipment or the right training? And 4, is it your fault as a line manager? Is there a way you're behaving that means that person can't perform? So I always ask those 4 questions, and until you can answer all of those, you haven't got a poor performer. Exactly. And 9 times out of 10, you can't get past the first one. Yeah. Does the person know that they're not performing? No, we haven't really told them. Well, then what are you doing?
Time and time again, because it gets to that point where someone is perceived to not be performing. No one's talked about.
No, the line manager gets increasingly exactly. Yeah.
And then it gets to right, we just need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
They're rubbish, or they're not performing. I'm like, well, hang on, let's just wind back a bit. And again, you can do what you like.
Yeah.
It's not me going no. Say, okay, let's just wind back. Do you think exactly those sorts of things? You need to cover those off, because sometimes you can. What starts out as that we need to do this, actually go, right, okay, or they're just not in the right role, or actually they just haven't been told. Or
the line managers duck the hard conversation.
More often than not, that's the case.
Yeah. So this certain individual, I said, this isn't working. We had a nice conversation. They said, it's such a relief. Can I have some say in the narrative on this? Because now that's a really difficult one for me, because I think you have to be absolutely honest with what's happening in a sensitive way. Because as soon as you're not honest as a leader, your integrity goes, and then you can't do anything else within the business. So with this gentleman, I said, yeah, we could do this. He wanted to go away and think about his narrative. He was later in his career, and he said, do you know what? I'd just like to say I'm retiring. I'm going to take a year out and focus on other things. I'd like to do that. We can support that. That's not a problem. Supported him with that narrative. He moved on. And about 6 months ago, I got the most glowing thank you note about the second chapter. He'd gone to something completely different, second chapter of his career, and really glowing things about how much he's enjoying reading about OC and things like that. And I was like, for that, having to fire that individual to get a glowing, I was like, that one went right.
Yeah.
They don't all. So I've had that whole range of emotions from, I've had someone vomit in the room, I've had someone try and physically attack me, I've had the whole range of stuff in terms of that. Lots of tears, lots of hyperventilating. Have you got any particular bad ones that you remember?
I've had a book thrown at me. Someone launched themselves across the table.
Oh, jeez.
Someone loitering outside the building when I finished. Those sorts of things where a few moments where you think, oh, wrong. But in a weird way, you can kind of get it. It's people's eyes. You just think, I really want to hear some of this.
Yeah.
But again, if you approach it in the way that you talk about, the amount of times where either it's redundancy situations where that's happened and people got in contact and say, it's the worst thing in the world at the time. Thank you for the support. And actually, I'm far happier now.
Yep.
Never would have sought that out had that not happened. And at the time, it was awful.
I think probably, I would say I'm still in touch with, I think I've facilitated 50 plus exits in different ways, shapes or forms from businesses. And I would say still in contact with a quarter of those in some way, LinkedIn or something like that.
Yeah.
And at least half have gone on to things that they enjoyed more or better as a result of that.
I think I always, in my mind, the way I approach things is, if after whatever you're dealing with, if I was to walk past them in the street, I could look them in the eye and they could look at me.
That's your moral test, is it?
Kind of moral test, because and that's how I think about it. Could I have such pride, pride in what I do, like I say, responsibility around it, that I think, if I was to walk down the street and I was to see them with their family, I could look them in the eye and go, hi, how are you, how are things? And they would feel that they could respond. I think that's when you know it's been okay. Well, like I said, that's not to be trivialising somebody going through redundancy, because it is, at the time, it's awful. Your life is turned upside down and there's so many worries, and it's really, really hard. And I think people always say, oh, does it get easier the more that you do? I'm like, no, it doesn't. You know what the process is, but it's not about the process. It's about the individual. It never gets any easier. You always feel a bit, my stomach churns a bit and I feel a bit sick just before. I just think the time that I just think, oh, rock up, I shouldn't be doing it.
No.
It's not right.
I think the emotional bit doesn't get easier. I hope that the professionalism and kindness you can deliver it by gets more drilled. Just with anything, you're more used to the conversation and you're more... Experience does count for certain things, like, to duck the book when it flies. Yeah. So if we go from the exit redundancy scenario and come back to sort of behavioural-based stuff, often there's inappropriate behaviours or challenging things that you have to address in a workplace. So pick whatever hypothetical behaviour we want. How would you approach that conversation? So say one of a challenge I've had in the past is someone who has a personal hygiene issue in the office or something like that. How do you go about approaching that type of scenario?
Very personalised and very private and very discreet for one. And I know that might sound really obvious, but that doesn't always happen.
Nope.
Which is awful. So again, these are probably like some of the most personal and very...
We don't want to have these conversations either, right? It's not like we'd love to have this.
Right.
No.
It's awful. And again, you get that feeling of thinking, oh, God, this is a bit awful. But I think, again, just in a humane... But first of all, I do it from a welfare check. Is everything okay? Yeah. I just want to...
That's often my first question in any form of HR-based issue, because I've had it so many times where the answer is no, tears, and no one's asked that person, are you okay? Because you can go in to have that conversation. If the answer's no, I'm not, bang, you're having a very different conversation, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because again, you don't know what's going on with that. And very often, and that exact example, I've had to have a conversation and started it with, are things okay? No, actually, they're not. I'm really struggling. I've been kicked out of my flat. I don't know where to live. So I'm dossing on my friends' couches. So in my head, the story's lining up. No wonder. Cause
this is a welfare issue now.
Issue rather than just that. So I'm really glad you've opened up. What can we do to help? What can we do? And then you put a support mechanism in place. And actually, what people will worry... It's the whole thing of, like, very often what people perceive the issue is absolutely not what it's about. It's about so much more.
Yeah.
And that's the same with conversation, the same thing around the performance thing, around, if it's a personal hygiene issue. It's very rare just because somebody has got bad hygiene.
Yeah.
It's because of a whole load of other things that go on in people's lives. So I think, approach it with I just want to talk to you, just want to see how you're doing. Are you okay? And if they don't open up, then you could start to gently introduce it to, well, the reason I asked if everything was okay is just because, and you've got to word it in a way because you don't want them to think, was everybody talking about this? And I'm the last to find out, because that must be awful for somebody. And you want them to leave the conversation going, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but I really appreciate knowing, rather than, well, everybody's been talking and, that. So the worst thing, so trying to approach it in a very kind of individual manner, and to say, I've noticed a little bit late, or I just wanted everything was okay because we have, or I have, or something that reduces the notion of how many people know, because that's really important.
So that's one of the issues, that in a world whereby remote working is more the norm, it's probably less of an issue. I had a fascinating one the other day. So a colleague who used to work with me in one business, he now works in a completely different sector, said in the middle of COVID, they were on a Teams call when people were all working at home, and one of the people on the Teams call started smoking on the Teams call. And the guy was like, he was just sat there going, I feel really uncomfortable about this, but he's in his own home.
What do I do?
Yeah, would you have said anything?
I don't know.
Right, right. I didn't have an answer either. I was like...
Because you're right, because that's where the realms of like home and personal, you then become a bit more of there's a judgmental then, isn't it? If you think, well, can you stop? Well, why? I'm not bothering anybody else. No, you're not. And you're in your home, but you are at work. Oh,
I know. I think I'd probably feel uncomfortable, but not feel able to say anything.
Yeah.
The other example I had is during COVID, different business, talking to someone there who's, and this is some of the challenges of people early in their career who maybe live in a house share or something like that, that their world revolves around one room. They had their washing behind them as they were there, and this person had her underwear over her shoulder on a Teams call, and I had to say, oh God, sorry. Yeah, move it away or something. But it's a really interesting one. A whole different range of HR topics and discussions that weren't a thing in an office place, but they now will be in a home setting. Yeah. And for our sort of interns and early career professionals, they've never worked in an office. We're now at a point where we've got sort of 3 generations of the workforce, I think. The ones that have never worked in an office, the sort of midsection who are used to a flexible approach, and often the most senior people and board members who have always been in an office and assume that's the way to go. Yeah. Whole different cultures and ways of working. Right?
Yeah. And more things to kind of deal with in terms of perceptions and, what we talked about before in terms of what does hard work mean.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, you've got that whole breadth now to deal with, and also what's important to people in terms of what they're looking for in an employer. That's really different now, I think, in terms of this generation coming through compared to those where you think about those at the latter stage.
I think it's non-negotiable. If you want the most talented people, you cannot tell them they have to be in the office full time. Exactly. They just won't do it anymore because other places will give them that freedom of choice. Yeah. And also, we've proven you can work fantastically remotely, separately. And actually, for some of the things we do around sensitive people issues, and it's actually better to be at home, because you can have a private conversation where you don't have to worry about open plan working and things like that, and you're not worried about meeting rooms. You can have those quiet conversations, and you can also afford people the flexibility they need to live a fantastic life. So I love Von Chenard's book on Let Your People Go Surfing, because you can only go surfing when the waves are up. You can have the conversation later on in the evening.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. I think there is I suppose it depends on people's personalities as well, is that I get a certain energy from some social interactions.
Yes.
Actually, I can be very, I need to be in my own headspace and I need to concentrate on something. And I think it's getting that balance right for people as well. So the balance for me is where it's a bit of both. And also you can't, there's certain things you can't replicate. Those moments where you have a connection with somebody, or you go, oh God, I was just, so do you know that, right, okay, well, can I just grab so-and-so because that, and you can't replicate some of those like coffee moments or those moments where you just get that connection. But absolutely, yeah, I think home working from home, remote has its place as well.
I need the variety of time at home, time on the road, time in an office. And if I don't have it, I just get miserable.
Yeah.
I need the excitement of having the team around. So we start every Monday with an all-team call. And the amount of whatever else is going on, everyone's like, we need that call because that gives us the energy and the impetus to start the week off.
Yeah.
there's lots of people in the room and they're all nodding about that one, which is good. I'm aware we've got time, so I'm going to take one more pause and we'll come back for a part 3. So, policies and procedures. So you, me and Andrew did some work recently on putting into place what our maternity, paternity, sickness and policies were. I love procedures. I hate policies because I think it forces businesses to do the bare minimum, because if you want to write it down, I understand they're a necessity and people need them, but I found that really difficult because I want to be as generous as we can be in those situations. Where are you on policies and procedures?
I hate loads of policies. Sorry to the profession that Phil.
Yeah, we shouldn't be allowed to do this together.
Hated by.
Yeah.
Life isn't dictated by straight lines, policy, things happen. So I personally rebel against policies. I think they have their place. Of course, in this profession, there are certain statutory obligations we have to have. But I just think life isn't like that.
And they're set so low as well.
I know. And also, if you find yourself where you're trying to create a continual learning where you might have people that are amazing but don't yet have enough managerial experience, you're then forcing those that maybe want to thrive to then go, oh, well, I'll just do what that's in.
Yeah.
That's not creating growth for those people.
Just revert to the basic minimum norm.
Look at that and go, sorry, did you say your grandma died? Right, okay. Well, that's one day you get for that. I'm like, well, you don't know if that grandma was a mum to you.
So we have a person that works in our business whose wife was severely ill in a previous chapter of their career, and someone asked them to work on a particular day when this person had surgery, and they said, I'm sorry, I have a personal thing, my wife's having surgery, I'm taking a day here. And the senior person wrote back and went, you've miscoded that to the wrong absence category. That was the day the person decided they were leaving that business.
And this is the thing, because what does that say to people? I don't care. I haven't considered what's going on in your life. You're just a number, or you're just a role.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think they have. I think there's a balance to the point I'm making around, for those that maybe are gaining experience and confidence in those things, some guidance.
Yeah.
Not policy.
It's such a balance, isn't it? Like the one we had the challenges around that was things like expense policy. So I've worked in two very different worlds. I've worked in the public sector where you can't expense anything and you have to pay for everything, and if you do, you're fired, through to a very commercial organisation before auction and conservation, where the gentleman, who's an amazingly generous guy, his rule is just don't take the piss.
Yeah.
I had to explain to him, no one knows what that means. Yeah. So you enjoy the finer things in life. Your definition of don't take the piss is a £200 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
A new intern's definition of that is, I don't know what I'm allowed to do. Yeah. So you have to put some parameters in place. So we've tried to offer up guidance and principles that says you might want to look at this. One area we've had that's really interesting is because we've got a team of people who are so passionate about the environment and so conscious about what they consume, I can't get them to buy PPE.
Yeah.
Because I don't need it. I'll keep using those. And I'm like, they're really not okay. We need you to be wearing the appropriate footwear. You need another coat. You're not going to be. Yeah. So we've literally published everything everyone's bought at a senior level to say, look, this is okay. Please, please do this. Please, and a note at the top that says, please challenge us on what you need. We want to support you doing this. Yeah. And we're just having to go, we want to protect and help you. Please do this.
It's such an interesting, the point you made around just don't take the piss.
Yeah.
It's interesting where some of those...
The intent is so generous.
It's so generous. And it's the same as where I was reading this article, I forgot which company it was now, where there's a couple of companies that have done it where there's no policy on holidays. Take as much holidays you like.
Yeah.
Do it. There's no... And I just... The intent is great, but...
Everyone you ask says no one takes holiday.
And no one takes holiday.
Yeah. The same thing, when we were doing our research on this, the paternity one, do you remember the finance sector said there was two companies we found, one were benchmark, and I hate benchmarking aside, but gathering some intel, two financial service companies that said unlimited paternity. And when we dug under it, it's like, how much do people take? Oh God, no one takes it.
Don't take it.
Because you'd lose your position in the hierarchy or things like that. So I think it's trying to be as generous as possible. And I also think another rule for me is the same does not mean fair. Yeah. If you assume that everyone needs the same thing, it doesn't. The person needs what they need and what they deserve. If you have an amazing high performer that's given every ounce of everything they've got for a team, they should get more. They absolutely should.
Yeah, it is. And it comes back to, these are individuals. Not everything applies to the same scenario, to the same person. It doesn't land, or they don't receive that in the same way, or they don't perceive the value of that in the same way because of so many different things. So yeah, I think there's that active permission. There's definitely a piece around that as well, because I think not having policies or not having any guidance, I think, leads to some kind of, well, I don't think I can't ask. And I do think there is something. So what I try to encourage is kind of say, look, here's some guidance. These are things you can ask.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out what's best for you. So if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure, can I ask it?
We have, please break these rules in a meaningful way, like in a purposeful way, and tell us it. Like, we want to know where you've challenged us and where you've seen this breaks. Because if not, you can't write. It's the reason laws take years and years to write, because you could unintentionally incentivize it. I remember at the time in the public sector, there was big pay freezes everywhere. And I went into an area to run it so it's like 300 and something people, certain geography in the country. And I went to see the field team, so the people that literally are cleaning trash out of rivers and fallen trees to try and stop things flooding. I was like, guys, what's going on? What do you need? And a hand goes up. Can we get a cable for the sat-navs? And I said, you've sat-navs for the vehicles. You want sat-navs? No, we've got sat-navs. You're going to have to, sorry, what? They're like, oh, well, the cable broke and we're not allowed to buy IT stuff, and that's the cable. And I'm like, yes, you can buy that. But there was a government-wide IT freeze to save money, so they didn't have sat-navs. So they were getting lost when they were going to try and find sites and things like that. But like, we don't want anyone to lose their jobs. And they were worried that if they bought IT, there'd need to be redundancies. And it was like, this is madness. And that wasn't the intention of the policy. It was to stop people buying lots of IT equipment at the end of the year when budgets were being frozen. But that you've got to be careful of what the unintended consequences of policy or a procedure are.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So no, we're on the same page.
What do you wish you'd been told at the start of your HR career that you know now?
God, there's probably quite a few. I think the main one that came to mind when you said that is, and for most of the time you'll be between a rock and a hard place, I think.
Yeah. Bear the tension, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably it. There's others more specific stuff, like in certain environments where you work. I got really good advice from one of my friends, and it was I'd never had union experience before until one of the organisations I worked in. And I remember I just tried to get things completed, and I always want to do a good job and make sure people feel there's real value in the conversation they have and there's tangible outputs. And I was looking at this, she was like, you have to remember, if you remove everything from the list, there'll just be new things on the list. You're never going to not have a list.
No.
And you need to understand, that they need to see a value, they need to have their worth, and you need to find. I was like, God, that take it. Not that I work in a unionised environment now, but those sorts of things is where you think, God, yeah, that would have been really good to know, because I might have changed how I initially approached it. But brilliant relationship with the unions. It was really, really enjoyed that aspect of it as well.
I did not.
We had where I worked, we had three recognised unions, and I worked with two of them. My first experience, so I suppose I didn't really know any different. And maybe if I worked somewhere else in a union as well, I'm like, oh, but they were amazing, really good relationships. And like now linked in with them and keep to see what they're doing afterwards. But it's a hard role they have. It's a really hard role.
My experience in the public sector with the union side of things, most was self-serving campaigning.
Yes.
That was the only challenge. There was one or two. A chap called Greg Marshall, if he's out there looking at this, he was incredible and genuinely advocated for the people that were doing the job as well as they could. He was pragmatic, he was practical, he was logical, he was trying to do the right thing. Yeah. A lot of the others were just waiting for their own golden handshakes to depart.
I think,
and they're retired now.
Yeah. As always, it's those that kind of ruin it for everybody else when you've got the good ones that genuinely care. And certainly the people that I've worked with, you could see there was such emotion in why they were asking. It wasn't just, oh, we just need to ask. There was like, we really, this is what's coming from these people really. So I really enjoyed that element. So I think, it would have been good to know that before. But I think overall, I keep coming back to, you almost always find yourself between a rock and a hard place for so many different scenarios.
Yeah, so I think that's the test bed out there, right? If you're thinking about a career in HR or people leadership in any way, often there isn't an ideal answer.
Yeah.
Andrew has a quote, we don't have the luxury of black and white. Everything we live in is shades of grey.
It is. Sometimes you hear people like, I think I'd like to do that because I like to, I forgot what term someone said to me, I like to help people. It's like, you might find it hard, and I get the sentiment, which is probably how I approach it, is to try, if the sentiment means by doing the right thing by people and trying to make, all the things that I've talked about, kind of respect to the team, is fine. But if you want to do it because you're going to please people and help people,
it's very different.
Not the right profession, because you're going to find yourself feeling like you're not doing the right thing by people, but you're doing the right thing for the business, and you've got to then find the right route in between. So yeah, rock and hard place, definitely.
I hope what we've done is the right thing by people today to give them some insights into the world of HR. Sarah, thank you so much. I loved every minute of that. That's your shoot room session done and dusted.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.